Hi, welcome. Hope you're doing well. So if you're interested in the number 12 and how that corresponds with music and how there's like sort of 12 notes, 12 steps that kind of go around and you get back to where you started, well, I'd like to kind of dig into why that's the case. But before we do, let me just provide a little bit of context. So in a previous video, actually two previous videos, I've been kind of just digging into this number 12 because you see it pop up everywhere. I was just like pretty fascinated by it. So the first video kind of starts off with how the number 12, why it's so important with our calendar and how we tell time, and that kind of ties back to our solar system and the lunar cycle. And the second video was about the number 12 in religion, which you see it pop up in various religions throughout civilization. And this is sort of the culminating video. It's just about the number 12 with regards to music. And if you go back to the first video, you can see I kind of explain sort of the mathematical basis of why this number 12 is important. And one of the reasons is because it's what's known as a superior, highly composite number, which is actually pretty unique because between 1 and a million, there's only 10 of those numbers, and 12 happens to be one. And that just is because 12 has a lot of divisors that, that divide evenly into whole numbers. That might have something to do with why it's so important with music. But if it does, I'm not really sure why. Let me know in the comments if you know why. But the root of it, if you will, is really because the 12th root of 2 has apparently some unique properties that make it work out pretty well. And I'm going to dig into that and why that's the case. But before I dig into that, let's just kind of back up and just look at the number 12 in music and why that's important. Because if you look at what's called the chromatic circle, it's like, say you start with A, which is a good place to start because it's A, like first in the alphabet, and it's at 440 hertz, which is even number. You start off at A, then we go down to A sharp is the next note, and then you have B, and then C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, and then you've made a full circle and you're back to A. And it's kind of like similarly with like when we talk about the solar system, it's like, the Earth is taking its orbit around the sun, and after a full year it gets back to where it started, and then it kind of loops over again. And so the chromatic circle is kind of the same, but it's actually kind of different in the sense that it's not really a circle, because when you come around from A, when you start at A and you get back to A, that's not really the same A. Like you're going to a higher octave A. So in that sense, it's kind of more like a spiral in a sense, because you're kind of getting bigger as you come back to A. But that A is actually pretty important. That initial A and that A that's a higher octave. And you would kind of, if you were just trying to kind of develop your own music system kind of from scratch, you'd probably come to that same conclusion that that A and that A octave higher is pretty important. So let's kind of dig into why it's the case. So we're kind of going to get into the math and look at sort of a time domain signal of A. Okay, so here's that 440 hertz signal. Let's just go ahead and label that as A at 440 hertz. So if you're just starting with A and you wanted to develop a musical system that sounded of other notes that sounded good with it, the first thing you want to do is just look for what is another note that aligns with these peaks here. So let's just go with say we want something to align with this first peak that we see after the beginning. Let's go ahead and just draw a line down from there. Okay, so here's a line down from this first peak, and I'm going to go ahead and throw in then A at the next octave higher here and see what that looks like. All right, so here's the next A, and it starts at the same peak right here, and then it's got this other peak right here that aligns with that first peak. And actually, it turns out that all of these peaks here, this one, this one, this one, this one, they're all going to align with peaks on this this A that's an octave higher, and we'll just go ahead and label that down here as A, and this is at 880 hertz, which of course is just equal to 2 times 440 hertz. And these are actually going to sound good together, and that's because these peaks are going to line up, and our ear apparently likes that. So if you're trying to develop a musical system and you're just, well, just 2 notes is probably not going to give you quite the variety that you're looking for. So what's the next note that you'd probably want on here? Well, instead of aligning with this first peak, let's say I want something to align with this second peak. That's probably the second thing that you look for. And let's go ahead and show that here. So we're wanting to align with this second peak here, which it does align with that larger A. But it also aligns with this, our fifth. But before I go on, let me just denote that, you know, we call both of these A, and you can distinguish those. This at 440, this is known as A4, and 880, this is A5. But what we're showing here is what's known as the perfect fifth. Let me just go ahead and write that down. Okay, why that's called the perfect fifth, I'll actually explain that in a little bit later, but just bear with me here. It's sort of the next best thing besides this octave, because it's hitting the peak at that same time as that second one is. And then the next thing that you'd want if I'm developing this musical system is, well, I got something that aligns with the first peak, the second peak. How about something that aligns with the third peak? And my note that aligns with this third peak is going to be known as the perfect fourth. Why that's the perfect fourth, again, I'll get into that a little bit later, but you can see that it does align well with this third peak. But these are actually somewhat different. You'll notice that this perfect fifth, you can see it actually kind of aligns with this first peak here, in the sense that it's got a trough at where that first peak is up here, and that's what's going to be actually going to make it an even interval. And you could tell that because it's hitting the second peak and it hits the fourth peak, and this perfect fourth is going to be an odd interval because it's just hitting the peaks. It doesn't hit the troughs in the same way. But let's just, if we dig a little bit deeper into this, so this perfect fifth here, it's got what's known as a 3-to-2 ratio. So what that means is, like, if I'm going over two peaks in my bass frequency here, my A note, that's going to correspond to the third peak here. So we got 1, 2, and the third peak here. So it's a 3-to-2 ratio. My perfect fourth is this 4-to-3 ratio. So if I go over three peaks, 1, 2, 3, I come down here, and this is the fourth peak over 1, 2, 3, 4, and they line up 4-to-3. And so this is basically the ratio of this frequency to that bass frequency. So this is going to be at 660 hertz, and this is going to be at 587 hertz. If you want to find another note to add onto here, the next best thing is going to find a note that aligns with this fourth peak here. So we got 1, 2, 3, fourth peak. Let's go ahead and show that up here. Okay, so at this fourth peak, we've got this note here that aligns well with it, and this is going to be a 5-to-4 ratio, and that's because the fourth peak here lines up with the fifth peak here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they line up 5-to-4. So this would be like the next note I'd add in. And you could keep kind of adding in notes like that, but they're not, as you keep adding them in, they're not quite as important. They're not going to sound quite as good together. Really, the 3-2 is the best, 4-3 is the next, and then it kind of goes on. So if you just wanted to have three notes in between these octaves here, these would be the three that you would pick, and this would give you the start of what's known as a just intonation system. So it turns out this isn't actually the system we use, and that you might wonder why, because these would sound great together, and they do. And actually some Chinese and Indian music does still use this, and this is actually when initial music theory just kind of followed this. Like, this is what you might think of if you thought of this from scratch, and this would actually work, and it did work, and this is how kind of music started with this sort of setup here. But the problem comes in if you say you've got a song that's in A, and I wanted to switch it to D, which this perfect fourth is about D. Say I wanted to switch it from here, because say I got a singer, he can't quite hit this low vocal range, he wants to just bring it up a little bit higher so it matches their range. Well, let's see what happens if I tried to do that. So instead of trying to match these peaks to A, let's just say we wanted to change the key to D and see if everything lines up to D. Here are the lines showing the peaks of D, and you can see that they actually do line up with A on both sides. At least, you know, this first peak lines up with that trough there. The second peak lines up with this trough up here, and the peak down here. So they still lines up with A, as you'd expect, because as we got D from sort of deriving it from A. But if you look at those other notes, they don't really work out so well. So these other notes, if you look at the first, second, third, fourth peaks, they're not none of these other notes don't have peaks that line up with it, so they're not really going to sound good together. So if I just had these notes here, they'd all kind of be in tune with A, but they wouldn't really be harmonic with changing the key to D. So that's why just intonation Doesn't really work if you want to change keys around, doesn't really allow you that flexibility. But what does allow you that flexibility is to use an equal temperament type of system. So that's kind of the motivation for having these 12 steps, and let's get into that. All right, so here's our equal temperament system. Let's go ahead and get started with this. So we're going to start with the same note here. Let's just start with A. So we'll just call this A at 440 hertz. And we got the same goal of starting off with going up a full octave, and exactly, like just multiply this by 2. And we've also got A down here, but it's at 880 hertz. Of course, this is our A5. And our A4, because these are different. They're both A's though. Okay, so what we want to do here is just divide this into 12 steps to get from this A4 to this A5. And we want to do that. The difference that we have here with just intonation is we want all these steps to be proportional. So we're going to jump up from this to the next note by the same percentage, or multiply it by the same factor, and then we're going to multiply it 12 times so that we finally get to 880. And that'll give us 12 even steps. And that's going to allow us the flexibility to change the key, because if everything's based on these percentage changes, then you can just move it around and all those percentages hold, and everything kind of stays the same if you want to change the key. So what is the key here in order to get from 12 steps from 440 to 880 is you've got to multiply by something. And what is it that you multiply 12 times to get you to 2? Well, it's the 12th root of 2. So mathematically, it's just, you could just imagine that A5 is 880 hertz, which is equal to 2 times 440 hertz, which is equal to, another way to say 2, a little more complicated way, is to say 2 to the 1/12th to the 12th, because of course that gives you 2. So we multiply it 12 times to get here, but the first time we're going to do is, in order to get our A sharp, we're going to say that's 440, or we'll say 466, which is going to be equal to 440 times 2 to the 1/12th. Our next note is going to be B, and that's going to be about 494 hertz, which is going to be about equal to 440 times 2 to the 12th squared, and so on. And if we keep multiplying by this down here, we're going to end up with all of our notes. So let's just go ahead and write those notes out here. C, and then C sharp, and then D, D sharp, and we go straight from D sharp to E, and there's no E sharp, so we'll go straight from that to F, then F sharp, then G, then G sharp, and let's go ahead and erase this right here just so it doesn't get in the way of my face. Okay, so these are notes we're going to get to, but let's take a look at these on our time domain plot. And first of all, we're just going to show here where these peaks are. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fourth peaks, and we'll see how those line up with all these other notes here. And of course, the first one here, which we know is going to line up really well, is our A5 note. And of course, all those peaks line up as you'd expect, because we just formulated this, so it's going to get up to, it's going to be exactly a multiple of 2. So that's the easy one. That's a given. We kind of forced that one. But let's take a look at this next note. How about A sharp? How does that look? So here's A sharp, and you can see it's not really, you look at all these peaks, first, second, third, fourth peak, it's not really lining up well with any of them. So that's kind of not the greatest. They're not going to sound good together. So let's go ahead and move on to B, and also not the greatest. You see it's not really lining up with any of these peaks here. But you see it actually does line up, has a sort of a trough right here that does line up pretty well. So what that's going to indicate is that if we went down several more, you could see that peak is going to line up, and this is going to be an even interval. It's actually going to have a sort of a 9 to 8 ratio that you can't really see here. And so it's not nothing. It's not really what we're looking for here, but it's not It's not the worst. But let's go ahead and move on to C. And as you can see, it doesn't really line up very well. So kind of a swing and a miss on that one. So you might not be super impressed so far, and I could understand that. Let's move on to C sharp here, and you can see it's not too bad. Look at the fourth peak; it kind of lines up here with the fifth peak of this one. So this is actually pretty good, close to a 5/4. Not super horrible. Not not the greatest, but hey, we're making a little bit of progress here. It's not too bad. The next one is going to be D. Okay, so this one actually lines up pretty well. You can see it lines up pretty well with the third peak, and that's going to be the fourth peak here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 peaks, and this is going to be a 4:3 ratio. And if you notice, that's actually lining up pretty darn good. It's like almost exact. It's actually only off by about 0.1%. So that's actually really good, because that 4/3 was one of the most important notes that you would make if you were just trying to make a system, and this is actually really close to it. So D and A are going to sound really great together. And then we have D sharp here, our next one. Nothing to really write home about. So moving on, and if I get a drum roll here, please, we have, ladies and gentlemen, E. And this one is pretty darn good. So you notice that it's lining up with 2, the second peak here, and it's lining up with this fourth peak. And even the first and third peaks are lining up with the troughs here. So this is our 3-2. And again, it's only off by about 0.1%. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is why we like this 12-step equal temperament system, because what's happening is just sort of by happenstance, with multiplying by this 12th root of 2, we're getting these notes, particularly in this case E and D, if you start with A, that are really close to these really important that we're looking for, the 3-2 and the 4-3. Those are the most important ones, and these are super close. So that's why this right here is really why. But let's keep moving on, and let's go to our F, and not that great, and our F sharp, and it's okay. You can see that it lines up with this third peak here. It's lining up okay. So this is actually close to a 5-3 ratio, because that third peak of our A is lining up with this fifth peak of our F sharp. And then we have our G, nothing super awesome. And then we have G sharp, also not super impressive, although you do notice that there is this trough here that lines up pretty well with this peak, which meaning that down the road there's going to be, you'll see the peaks that line up, and this is close to 15.8, but really not that great, to be honest, but it's not nothing. So this is how our time domain signals of all these notes line up with our base frequency here of A. So let's just go ahead and listen to all these notes together and see how they sound as we step through these. All right, so we're starting off with A. Okay, so you can just see how those like stepped up in pitch as you went through, and maybe it didn't sound that awesome together. But let's try this again. But let's just hit the ones that are in orange here that I've shown these different ratios for. Okay, so we're going to start off with A, and then we're just going to go to the whole step and just go down this scale. So you'll notice when I just played those ones in orange, those ones we've shown the ratio for, they actually sound pretty good together. And of course that's part of the scale, and it's part of the scale because these are the notes that correspond well to A and hit these pretty close to these ratios that sound good to our ear. So you may be thinking, yeah, that's great, but you didn't really show me why 12 is so special or unique here. Why not do 11 steps? Why not do 13 steps, 7 steps? You know, something lower, something higher. Why 12? Well, let's take a look at that. Just compare another number. Let's take 13. We had kind of talked about the number 13 in some other videos, so let's just go ahead and roll with that. And what I'm going to do here is instead of having this 2 to the 1/12th to the 12th power to get to this next octave A, we're just going to go 2 to the 1/13th to the 13th power. That's going to get us there. So let's see where that takes us. Oh, but before we go to look at the 13-step system, let's stick with 12 just for a minute, because I promised I'd tell you why we get that perfect fifth and perfect fourth name from. So let me just go ahead and write out these notes again really quick. So if we just consider this scale here, we've got we can just go ahead and assign these numbers. So we'll just call this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 step of the scale. And so you notice that D and that E line up really good, and this is the fourth step in the scale. So we're just going to call this so that's why they call this the perfect fourth and this the perfect fifth. All right, so now that we close the loop on the perfect fifth and perfect fourth, let's go ahead and convert from looking at this 12-step equal temperament system to what a 13-step equal temperament system would look like. All right, so we're going to do equal temperament with 13 steps now. And let's go ahead and start with A at 440 hertz again, which we're showing here. And if you recall, our goal here is we want to find other notes that line up well with the peaks here on A. So let's go ahead and show those peaks. And we're going to start off with the next higher A, because that's what we need to get to. And of course, these peaks are going to line up, and they're going to line up because we forced it. But let's just write that down here. Because of course now we're taking 13 steps to get here instead of 12. So let's see what each of these look like. In our first note, I guess we can call it A sharp, is of course going to be 440 times 2 to the 1 over 13. Who cares what that number is? No one cares. But that's how we get it. And if we see what that frequency looks like, here it is. And doesn't really look that great, right? Now let's just go ahead and show all those other frequency and see how well these other frequencies line up with these different peaks here. This first one, second one, third one, fourth one. Okay, so now we've got all of our notes here. So there's going to be 13 steps as we go down here, and surely at least some of these are going to line up, right? Well, we've got our first one here, and that doesn't really line up with anything except if we get down to A4. But that's kind of A5. That's kind of what you expect, because you kind of gotta that's not going to happen if these are between that frequency of 440 and 880. You're not going to find something that matches that first one in between those frequencies. So let's check out the second peak. All right, surely something's going to line up here, right? Well, if we look down here, nothing really even comes close. All right, so let's go ahead and let's say 3 to 2 with 13. Don't have it. That's not good. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this third peak here. We're looking for that 4 to 3 one, and if you go down, there's nothing really that comes close either. So 4 to 3, another miss here, nothing even close. So not looking too good so far. All right, and here if we look down at our fourth peak, you can see that it kind of lines up to this one. Not really perfect. It's kind of there. I mean, kind of have a 5/4. Not the greatest. It's kind of there. But you can see why if we divide this into 13 steps, this is really less than ideal, because we're missing our really first two key harmonics. We're kind of getting this 5 to 4, but really like none of these are really going to sound that great together. So that's why we're not going to go to 13. So perhaps this is why 13 is considered such an unlucky number, right? Because like if we go back to those videos we looked at, like we don't consider 13 months. We don't consider there could have been 13 tribes. We could have called 13, but we never did. It could have been 13 disciples, but we never did. Always had to be 12. Always avoided 13. Even buildings, right? Buildings can't even have the number 13th floor, right? So, but you may consider, well, this is because 13 is unlucky. Well, if you look at any other number, under 12, they're all going to look bad too. Like there's nothing that really comes close to how 12 lines up with the 3 to 2 and the 4 to 3, perfect fifth and perfect fourth. So this is really why we end up with 12 steps with our equal temperament system in Western music, because it's the only number that really hits these two primary harmonics without going to some like ridiculously high number or some obscure like decimal type number. So that's why we've landed on it, and I hope this helps you kind of appreciate why that number 12 is important with music, and hope you enjoyed the series as well. And until next time, take care.